White Centipede Noise Podcast is made possible by your support via Patreon. Go to patreon.com/White Centipede Noise to support, and stay tuned to hear about the exclusive benefits and bonus content available with this episode. You're now listening to White Centipede Noise Podcast. I'm Oscar Brummel, and today my guest is Nick Forté, who is behind the noise projects Green Tea, Half Mortal, as well as the guitarist of Raspberry Bulbs and the former guitarist and founding member of pioneering hardcore band Warshock, among many other eclectic musical projects. Okay, Nick Forté, welcome to White Centipede Noise Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Oscar. Happy to be here.
I'm very happy to have you here. And, you've made quite a splash in the noise world in the past couple years with your, works as Green Tea, Half Mortal, some other things like that. But for those who don't know, you are obviously a, long time musician, might say legend in underground music, and you've been a part of a lot of different genres, bands, important stuff. So before we kind of get into the details of all of what you've done and what you do, could you kind of give me a brief kind of chronology or timeline of your musical history? I mean, as brief as you want to be, as deep as you want to be. I mean, I know that's asking a lot. It's complicated, but kind of just like,
okay. There's been so much, and some of it nobody cares about, and some of it people care about quite a bit. So it's a little confusing to what to focus on, and but in the scope of, like, I guess what we're talking about here, it starts pretty early on for me when I was like 15, 16, with Warshock, the hardcore band from New Jersey, and we did that for. That was my whole kind of teenage years. And we made our first album when I was just the week I graduated high school. We made our first album. So, from there, it was making records for 35 years or 30 something years after that. It was started then and kept going. I mean, there was a lot after that, a lot of different bands. And then kind of a big break for me was probably around 2000 when I kind of gave the band thing a little bit of a rest and got a computer and started making computer music, electronic music. I call it computer music because I viewed more what I was doing as computer music and not like part of like techno or IDM, which is a term I despise. And then I started doing that and started doing like way more experimental stuff. And more bands after that, different genres, post-punk, black metal. And then the next big one was probably Raspberry Bulbs, which was like 2010.
Yep.
And so basically there's like these two concurrent things with me. There's like my bands, my rock bands that people know. And then there's like the electronic music, the experimental music, the noise music, which other people know.
Right.
And there's some people that know both, and there's some people that have no idea I do the other thing. So now I'm outed as being this guy who does all this stuff here today on the podcast.
Do you think it's probably more common that people from the noise and experimental side know more about your rock stuff than people from the rock side know about the like noise and experimental stuff?
Yeah, there's people that know the rock stuff that are like the hard, especially Rorschach, that don't have any idea or don't care. Or that's fine. It's hard to get people to care about anything. So if people care about something I did 30-something years ago, that's great.
Okay, so Raspberry Bulbs, right. That was around 2010.
Yeah, that was around 2010. I mean, I can tell you that whole story if you want now, but
let's jump into that. I was about to ask you how you got involved with the Raspberry Bulbs.
Right. So I didn't have a band, I don't think at the time, and I was actually looking to like play in a band. I was like, I want to play in a band, and I was talking to some like black metal bands in New York City and stuff, and because I wanted to play black metal, I wanted to do something like that again, just because we had just done a Rorschach reunion stuff,
Yeah.
and I kind of got the bug to like play, clubs and play rock guitar. Like I just got the bug again
Yeah.
based on doing this Rorschach reunion stuff in like 2009. Because that was really fun and great. And so I live upstate New
Mhm.
York now, and I have for 20 years. But I was in the city. I was in New York City in 2010, subletting a place with my wife. She had to work down there, and we were like pretty close to the hospital store where we were subletting. And I wasn't working or anything, so I was just like, "What am I going to do all day?" So I just started hanging out there all day long,
Yeah, nice.
like every day.
Yeah.
And it was kind of funny. I would just like get lunch and go to the hospital store, and
Yeah.
I just hung out down there. And at that time, Jim Siegel was working there, better known as Ning Nong, and the drummer in
Yeah.
Raspberry Bulbs.
Right,
And
okay.
the Raspberry Bulbs record, "Nature Tries Again," had just come out, and I was a big fan of the record.
Cool.
And that was just Marco Del Rio solo,
Okay.
and that came out on Hospital. So back when the Hospital store was there, which it's a great moment in time, or a few
Yeah.
years at least. I don't know how long it was there, but it was a while.
Was this the time when it was in the upstairs place, or was it still
This was the
down in the basement?
upstairs. Yeah, I used to
Okay.
go to the downstairs one too, but I actually preferred the upstairs when it was
Yeah, sure.
upstairs. But so when they put a new record out, they would put like 20 copies on the wall.
Yeah.
So I walked in and I was talking to him, and we got to know each other a little just there. I met him that week, and I was like, "Oh wow, the Raspberry Bulbs record, awesome! That's great." And he was like, "Yeah, the guy lives in New York." And I said, "He does?" He's like, "Yeah, he's starting a band. He's starting the band. He wants to do the live band, and I'm going to play drums." And I was like, "Wow, cool." He's like, "We need a guitar player." And I was like, "I'm the guy."
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Holy shit, that's perfect."
Cool. That's
And then
very
we actually hung out that night and like started playing like 4 days later or something. It was like quick.
You hung out with Marco that night, or did
Yeah,
you
yeah.
and
He came
or did you and
down.
Ning Nong come to him like, "Hey, we're gonna be like, he's in the band now,"
No,
or
he
something?
came down to the store. He came down to the store, and he's like, and I had played a fest with Bonall like
Okay.
the year before.
Yeah.
Rorschach played a fest with Bonall. Like they did like the black metal night, and we did like the hardcore night or
Yeah.
whatever. And so I actually didn't meet him then, but like we were like kind of like crossing paths a little bit, and
Sure,
just
sure,
like
sure.
I like wrote him an email about something once, and just like I don't know. And I was a big Bonall fan,
Right.
and then Raspberry Bulbs was like way weirder, and I was like, "What is this? This is crazy stuff." And
Yeah.
and then yeah, so we just started it like really soon after that. Like we just got going,
Cool.
and we were playing shows like pretty quickly. Really, first show was at Burning Festival,
Okay. Oh, Burning Fleshful, was that at the
the Yellowtears house
yeah, the
with
Yellow Tears house, the red light district?
Red Light District. Yeah, that they
Yeah.
called it Burning Festival, right? Or that was the
Right.
thing
Yeah,
they
yeah,
did. I think
yeah,
they
yeah, of
still do it.
course.
Yeah,
I think they still
right.
do
The
that.
Red Light District. And so we played at their house the first show, and it's probably like the most nuts show we ever played.
I
Really,
bet.
yeah, it was crazy.
And so have you been part of Raspberry Bulbs since then?
Yeah, yeah, the whole time. So now
Cool.
I mean, I've been in this band longer than any other band I've ever been in, but we had a few years where we didn't do anything.
Right.
And now
Mhm.
we live all over the place, and
Yeah.
it's just, some of the members are scattered throughout upstate New York, and Jim lives in Brooklyn, and Marco lives in California. So,
Right.
but we have plans to play live at some point. I don't know.
Cool. And there's a
Just
new
put a new
record
album
out.
out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, we just put
exactly.
the record out in the fall on Hospital.
Cool. Okay, so just kinda continuing to skim for
Yeah.
now, moving forward,
Mm.
what's kind of the time frame around Half Mortal
Yeah.
and Green Tea like?
Well, there's a real clean break there that everybody can relate to, is just pandemic day one.
Oh,
It was like, so Raspberry Bulbs was rehearsing, we just put an album out on Relapse. We were rehearsing to play shows. It was like a whole different reality was happening. Like we were getting like offers to play with some bigger bands. It was like things were kind of like, oh, this is like maybe going to turn into a thing. And we had a tour booked for April 2020. And then, the next thing you know, everything's off. You're
right.
back. I'm back at my house upstate, totally alone. Well, just, me and my wife, my dog, and just like I had nothing but time. Everything's canceled. I couldn't work. I was a bartender at the time. Like, I used to DJ sometimes, couldn't do that. So I was just like alone in my studio, and I was like, let's start a noise thing. Like, let's do some noise because it's something I've always wanted to get to. And
Yeah.
man, I might get the record for the biggest noise procrastinator of all time,
I don't
possibly.
know. Well,
Maybe you don't think so? I mean, like 22 years, maybe. I don't know. 20
well, it's
years to
interesting.
get
I
around to
mean,
it. I mean, although
it's
I've skirted it, you know.
right. I mean, I guess I wanna know, like, how long you've been into it and, like, if you had any sort of flirtations with it earlier. I mean, of course,
Yeah,
your experimental stuff for sure, but I mean, I think it's cool that, like, yeah, you're a dude, like, who's done a lot and, not a super young dude, and then, like, you come into the
no,
game, like, like, at this point in your life and, like, make some really, really excellent, like,
thanks.
forward thinking, radical killer, from 2 different angles, like Half Mortal and Green Tea, like,
Yeah. Well, they're the
just
2 angles I like. They're the 2
yeah, yeah, yeah,
strengths
but I mean
I
yeah,
enjoy.
and, like, really but, I think that's very uncommon for that to happen and for it to be good. I mean, I think, like, people being like, "Oh, I wanna try some noise," is like, at some point in their life, it's like, "Oh, yeah," but I mean, like, these are serious records, and this is a serious project.
Yeah, it's very serious. It's the main thing I'm doing now. This is the main stuff I'm doing. Noise is what I'm doing.
That's
Um,
cool.
musically, I'm not doing much else musically, and in fact, I'm only going deeper in as time goes on. It's just becoming more the thing. I mean, I should probably pick up a guitar now and again, but I haven't been.
Guitar is a more practical instrument to play.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean
probably. It's a little more boring at this point, but,
right, yeah, yeah, I can understand that.
yeah.
So yeah, so continue, sorry, the
Right, so
pandemic kind of
2020 was like, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to make a record that was just about those first couple of months of the pandemic, like, related to my feelings, like, everything's crazy, like, the world is crazy. Felt very, like, post-apocalyptic sort of,
mhm,
and I wanted to just capture that moment, like, right then. And I'm like, "This is probably gonna sound outdated in 2 years." Like, this is
mhm,
probably not gonna sound make I think it's still fine, but, like, I just knew that I was gonna do something, so I pulled a lot of, like, so I made the Half Mortal album, Cut Off from the World,
right,
which came out on Hospital in, I don't know, 2021 maybe.
yep,
Um, and I just busted it out. Like, I worked on it every day for like 12 hours a day, and I just, like, did it for like 2 months or whatever. And I just sent it. I'm like, I'm not going to spend a lot. I'm going to finish this. I'm going to send it to Dom and see what he thinks. And he was like, yeah, this is great. Like, this sounds pretty different than what's happening, and this is great. Let's do an album.
yeah,
So we put that one out, and then I did a couple of more tapes. The last one
yeah,
came out in the fall on the International Misanthropy
right,
series. Creature of Christ was that one.
yep,
And yeah, so I just was rolling with that stuff. Noise with vocals. It was something I've always wanted to do. And I, like, maybe about 7, 8 years ago, I kind of hit up some, like, hardcore vocalists. I'm not going to name any names. I hit up some, like, kind of heavy hitters. Like, hey, if I do, like, a noise thing, will you sing on it? Like, will you do the vocals? And nobody wanted to do it.
uh-huh,
So I was like, I got to just do it myself, you know. But
yeah,
so forever, I've wanted to do this, like, noise with vocals. I know people call it, like, industrial or power electronics, but I still call it noise with vocals because I don't know. I'm not like a genre guy. Like, I don't like to
yeah,
go too deep into calling anything. Like, that stuff has a lot of weight to it. Like, start calling it that. I don't know. I'm sure it is that, but I don't know.
sure.
So noise with vocals. So that was a big thing I've wanted to do. And I was like, pandemic, I got a lot of time. Let me do the noise with vocals.
And, I'm kinda skipping ahead a little bit for what I was gonna ask, but, the official description from that at least that first record, I think the project in general, from at least Hospital, I think, was, like, calling it death metal electronics.
Yeah. Well, that's a Dom thing. He names. He's
Yeah,
like, this is death. I just told him what it was about. I told him, like, what I was thinking, what the project was. He heard it, and the kinds of samples I was using, and the kind of vocals I was doing. He's like, this is death metal electronics. And
okay,
I was like, well, this doesn't have anything to do with death metal. He's like, no, it's death metal electronics. It's not
yeah,
death metal. And I
yeah,
was like, okay, I like that. And then that actually influenced the music going forward, like, kind of complete fruition on the Creature of Christ tape, like where
Yeah.
it really embodies, I think, the death metal electronics, thing. Like I think I live up to the name on the final, not the final, but the latest release.
That wasn't coming from you, like, you weren't deciding this is death metal electronics.
No, he did, but he
Okay.
when you work with him, you get a lot of input and a lot of like kind of like helping you like think more clearly about your own ideas. Like
Right.
he was just asking me a lot of questions about it, like just
Yeah.
the artwork and the concepts and the lyrics. He's just like, well, what's this all about? And when I got into it with him, he's like, oh, well, you're like, this guy who's been into death metal for 35 years, I mean, I got into death metal in like, the 80s
Yeah.
and saw like Morbid Angel and their first tour and all that kind of stuff.
Killer. Do you feel like, Dom is kind of like has like a producer role kind of in Hospital or something along those lines?
Sort of. Yeah. I like that. I mean, I almost wish I was like, if some of these tracks aren't good enough, let me know. He's like, no, 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 no. That you do that. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like,
Right.
so I almost sometimes when I work with labels, I wish people would take a more hands-on approach. Like, help me make it better.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. I mean, that's something I kind of talk about on and off on the podcast, but I think like that's a not every label has to do that, but I think that's like the sign of a
yeah,
of another level of like label when the person is
right.
really kind of involved in the cares about the process and cares about the product and wants to understand it and offers input and insight and maybe even some ideas. I mean, I
Well,
think
he
that's really
definitely did that, but just
yeah,
not on the musical end,
yeah,
but definitely on all the other ends. I was like, I want to use this image. He's like, no, 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 we're not doing that. And I was like, okay. And then he was right. And
yeah,
he
sure,
designed the logo. He did all the layout, and
yeah.
that's what he does.
Okay, so I do want to talk more about Half Mortal a little bit, but
Yeah.
then tell me about then the the green tea
Right. So
project.
I was doing the Half Mortal stuff, and I was just making a lot of music. I was making too much music, and Half Mortal is like exclusive to Hospital, and like that's the thing I'm doing with Hospital, and I was like, well, maybe I'm going to do another thing. Like this is going pretty good. Let
Yeah.
me. And I was also another bug I've had for years was like just harsh noise. Not vocals, not industrial, not with like the Half Mortal stuff. It's like that thing where people do that I do. It's like semi songs, like they're kind
Right.
of songs. Like
Right.
parts repeat, lyrics repeat sometimes. It's not songs, but it's not songs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Kind of
It's
thing.
structured. It has
Structure,
musical kind of
definite.
composer to it.
Yeah. But then I wanted to
As
do
is green tea, I would say, but
well,
carry on.
sure, but more it's more flowing and less structured than.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to do some stuff that was more I don't know, just incorporated all these other things I was thinking about, like harsh noise, and also this whole other strain of what green tea's about, which is like more like ambient stuff
Yeah.
and even like electronic music, like Basic Channel or like early 2000s, like Wolfgang Voigt, stuff like that. Like that's
Mhm.
just all in there. It's all in the soup, or
Yeah.
even like stuff like skaters and all that kind of stuff. I mean, who
Sure.
talks about skaters anymore? Well, it's in my DNA, all that Monopoly, Child Star Searchers,
Yeah.
and all those side projects too, that I like a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff, or even something like Caretaker, stuff like that. Just like I use a lot of vinyl in green tea, like a lot of samples, like
Oh, really?
not samples in a hip hop way, but like vinyl manipulation, like serious vinyl manipulation.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's hard to hear, it's hard to tell. I just gave it away. That's a lot of it's records,
That's interesting.
not like records that sound like what I'm doing. Like
Okay,
not
so like I mean, so the kind of like ambient or tonal stuff going on in green tea, is that like
yeah,
sampled from records or
it's all records,
okay, cool.
not synths.
Interesting.
Some of the
Cool.
noise is synths,
Sure, sure, sure,
which you
sure.
can't tell. It's not. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not. I use percussion synthesizers. That's my thing.
Okay.
I've been using a machine. All right, now I'm going to get nerdy. I've been
Go.
using a machine. I've been using a machine for about 25 years. A Kawai XD5. It's a percussion synthesizer from like 1989, And I heard that thing, a friend of mine played me that thing, and I'm like, this is the weirdest sounding thing. This thing just sounds weird. It's pretty digital, it's pretty dark sounding. And it just I still can't I want to find something that does what it does that's more modern, so I can just get something smaller because it's kind of a big rack mount thing.
Yeah.
And I can't find anything that does what it does, you know? Like it just has a unique sound.
That's interesting. Do you use it live? Because I saw a video of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I use it live. I've been using it at shows for since I've done experimental stuff. I've been using it almost every show I've ever done,
Cool.
just for different stuff. I didn't use it when I've done Half Mortal live, but I've been using it. I only done one Green Tea live show and I used it. Yeah,
Are you then just distorting it heavily?
yeah. I'm running it through. Well, I don't use a lot of distortion. I use a lot of saturation and gain, like
Yeah.
just like various stages of gain. Yeah, I'm running it through a bunch of effects. Not too many, but a very carefully curated
Yeah.
selection of effects that I've been working on the chain really for years. You know, even
Sure.
before I did this project,
Yeah.
this chain has been floating around in my work for many years. It's
Cool.
the same chain though. It's the same
Yeah.
Sherman filter. This I've been using this stuff for 15 years, you know.
So if on green tea we hear kind of like a continuous flow of sound and you're using a percussion synth, is that does that have a sustain on it, or are you having to, like, play
No,
the
I'm playing the
notes
shit out of it. I'm
kinda
playing it
constantly?
fast. Yes, I'm playing it
That's
with my
cool.
fingers really fast. And
That's awesome.
so you see me play live, I'm doing like the
Yeah.
finger drumming, as they say. But sometimes I can also make a sequence. You know, I like MIDI it up with an MPC or whatever, and then I can make a sequence and just play it at like 240 BPM or whatever.
Yeah.
And then this way I can manipulate the sounds in real time. And that's how I can get some of that more chaotic stuff happening that happens in green tea. And then it's just like a lot of reverb, a lot of gain, and a lot of saturation. And then post-production work in the computer is pretty heavy duty also, because I am a skilled computer production guy. I can do that stuff from doing electronic music. So I have, you know, a, a background where I know how to do the stuff, the computer stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. These 2, there's only been 2, well, there's a new one that just came out,
One
right?
came out today, this morning.
Today, right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so that one I haven't
Mechanical
heard yet.
Presence. Yeah,
Yep, definitely have to check that out as soon as possible. But the one on New Forces, your debut,
yeah,
and the one on Satatawata, Children of
yeah.
Wisteria. Yeah, they do sound like Harsh Noise records, but they have this both fresh sound in the sense that it's something new, but also like like the quality or the aesthetics is somehow like fresh and tropical in some way,
Mm.
and
That's the idea. Exactly what you said. That's what I'm trying to do. Yeah,
it's been described as psychedelic as well, and I'm
yeah.
the
I'll
concept
take
of
it.
the concept of green tea is also like, I read like the description in the New Forces CD that is based on this,
Yeah, horror story. Sheridan LaFanu, I think is how you say
right,
his name. He was like a Lovecraft kind of guy,
right,
and it's just the story about a guy who like goes crazy from drinking green tea, and you know he's like hallucinating about monkeys and stuff, and it's pretty dark, and but also like the idea of calling something green tea is pretty innocuous. Like green tea is something you get at the spa, you
yeah,
know, after a sauna or whatever. So
yeah,
it's like I like the butting heads of the two things of like the creepiness of the story where the name came from. And I didn't name the project actually. I reached out to Marco from Raspberry Bulbs and I said, you need to name my psychedelic harsh noise project.
cool,
And he sent me 5 names. And I said, and I didn't like any of them really except green tea. And I was like, whoa, can I call this that? Like, and he
yeah,
was like, that's the best name. He's like, you done good. You picked the best one.
yeah,
And then he
I
told me the background because he's really into horror stories and stuff.
yeah,
And he's good with the names. He's good with the project names.
cool.
Or just
That's a great
giving things double meaning.
I mean, it's a great name, and like you said, the budding up is like when I remember seeing it be released, I saw the title written first, Green Tea, and the title of the record, Snowblower, which already was like this bizarre, like, connection in my brain, and then the image, but this is like this black and white. I don't know,
Yeah.
is the image a snowblower, or what is that image?
No, I mean I don't want to give too much. I don't want to give that away
Okay.
too much. It's a structure. It's a building.
Yeah. I
I
mean,
have
but
like a
just
sorts of thrifted materials for images that I had been holding on to for a long time. And that one just clicked. And then, yeah, I mean, I didn't know that was going to happen. We did the layout. My wife's a graphic designer, so she helps me with
Yeah.
everything. And she's been doing my stuff for, 25 years. And we did the design and we were both like, holy crap, that's like, it's kind of iconic. I mean, you don't hit that every time,
No.
you just like, and I was like, the name of the project, with the name of the album and the image, it just created this thing that was like the thing you're trying to create when you're doing this stuff.
Exactly, exactly, and that already in itself, like, really, stood out. Even, a black and white album cover on a noise record, it's hard to make that stand out, but that one was just like, there's something
Yeah.
very interesting and strange going on here.
Yeah. Well, it was the zone I was in and it reflects the music, I was just really in the pocket making that one. And
How did it end up coming out of New Forces?
I met Stefan at the Dead God store a couple of years back, and we just hit it off. And I think I heard the Cryocene record he made,
Mhm.
him and Matt Bedke,
Yep.
right? That's the two of them. And
Yeah.
I just was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of what I've been doing lately. Like I just felt a similarity with
Mhm.
that record, with the Green Tea stuff that I was working on at the time. I was working on it and I was like, oh, this feels like a kinship
Yeah.
here. And I was like, well, we've met before. And I've been familiar with his label since he started it, really, and have liked it pretty much consistently the whole time. So I was like, let me just send him some stuff, just see what he says. I didn't think that would work, really. I mean, maybe, who knows? It's hard to know. No one heard it. No one's heard any of this stuff. So who knows if it's good or, it's like hard to tell
I
if
bet
no
he
one's
was
heard.
stoked.
Yeah. Well, I sent him 2 records. So here's what the real story is. Snowblower wasn't really made intentionally. I was making a different Green Tea record.
Okay.
And this is actually what happened. It's going to sound kind of weird, but so I was making a bunch of tracks that didn't fit on the record I was making. And I just kept going, well, this is really good, but I'm just going to put this to the side because it doesn't go with this other record. And I
Mhm.
just kept putting them to the side. Now, I was making a lot of tracks. So I just kept putting tracks to the side, putting tracks to the side. And then I finished the record I was working on. And I listened to it and I was like, this is great. I'm going to send this to Stefan. And then I'm like, well, what about all that stuff I put aside? Like, and I literally just listened to it in a row.
Yeah.
And I was like, uh-oh, this is better than the record I was trying to make. And I got pretty confused. Like, I
Yeah.
was like, and I sat there for a long time, just like looking at the floor, like, what do I do now? I didn't even make this record. Like, this wasn't
Yeah.
intentional. These were tracks that didn't go with the thing I was doing. But I knew they were good. They didn't fit. I'm like, well, I'll use them later. I'll use them later. And it needed a little tweaking. And like the last song was added later. But like, I was like, all right, I'm going to do something weird. I'm going to send him 2 albums. And they're kind of different, because the Snowblower is a bit darker and the mood is funnier to pinpoint. And,
Mhm.
and the one that he's still going to put out sometime this year, he's putting that one out.
Good.
Is maybe a little bit more keyed into like the kind of new age ambient vibe.
Mhm.
Um, it's hard to know
Yeah.
people always say what I'm doing is so dark, and I never really hear it that way. Like
Okay.
I don't know. Like people often say this is really dark, and I'm like, is it? I don't hear it that way. Like
I would say green
everything people say that for years.
everything. Well, I mean, Half
I don't
Mortal,
know.
I think, is very dark. I
Well,
mean,
that's actually me trying to be dark.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
the
yeah.
intent. But usually I'm not trying to be dark. It's not something I'm trying to do. Like
Yeah.
almost ever. Like Raspberry Bulbs, not trying,
Sure.
the Green Tea, definitely not trying to be dark. In fact, I'm trying to not be dark, sort of. And like, so Snowblower, it's kind of dark in a way, but it was all the tracks that were kind of put aside that were maybe the vibe was just weirder
Yeah.
on them. And in a way, it's great because it was like subconscious. And that's what I'm trying to get at with this project, is like more of a subconscious. Like, I don't want to think too much. Like, people are like, why is it called Snowblower? Why this, why that? And I'm like, don't ask me that. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
think about too much, because I mean, I know why it's called that, but like sort of, but
In your heart.
yeah, well, and also, I live in a rural area and this is my world, it's like I'm snowblowing. I have a snowblower.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah.
it's such a funny thing to be snowblowing, because it is a pretty kind of psychedelic experience. I mean, you're shooting this white shit out of this funnel and it's loud. And I just thought, what a funny thing to be doing. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a funny experience, to be doing this. And also it just seems like a noise term, like snowblower. It just feels like a noise that kind of esoteric noise kind of thing that we all like so much, where things
Yeah.
are kind of vague.
No, yeah, I mean, it is exactly that. That's what it's very noise, but it's also very esoteric in a weird way. I mean, there's, like, a million noise tapes or albums called, like, grinding mechanics or, like,
Yeah,
destructive machine or something like that, and it's kind of like almost I mean, it's kind of like referring to these industrial machines that make these sounds that are kind of, like, ingrained in the culture, but
yeah,
like I said, like, the snowblower, like, that's just different. I mean,
right.
and
Well, I'm pulling
the
from my world and my immediate
yeah,
surroundings, which are just
yeah.
like I live in the country. I'm alone a lot, and like I've got like my shed and gardening tools and a snowblower, a lawnmower. I'm not going to call the next record lawnmower. Don't worry. Um, and Children of Wisteria was the same thing. It's we have. I mean, do you know what a wisteria is? It's like an invasive plant that you put it on a building on purpose to like
Uh-huh.
climb. When you see buildings with plants climbing up them,
Oh, right, yeah.
that's wisteria. But
That vine.
the vine, yeah, the vine is wisteria. Problem is, it gets thick. It gets really thick, and it gets all intertwined.
And it can
And
fuck
it
up the
was like,
foundation, right, of the house.
yes, it was like destroying our house basically. It
Yeah.
was, and I had to chop it with an axe and like beat it down. And I was like, this thing is badass. Like, so I'm like, we are just the children of the wisteria. This thing owns the house, and you still can't kill it. It comes back every year, and it
Yeah.
it and it and it messes with the cable connection. It just messes with everything. So that's where that title came from. And so that's all about my surroundings and just what's happening in my weird little life.
Wave Expanse Open by Kate Rizzo. A buried in slag and debris release. Wave Expanse by Kate Rizzo. Available at buriedinslaganddebris.bigcartel.com. Also from distros in North America and Europe. For further info, contact buriedinslaganddebris@gmail.com.
What role does psychedelia play in all of this? I mean, there is a psychedelic element, and now you say that the green tea was kind of a given name, and a lot of seems like a lot of things happen kind of by serendipity or chance, and you kind of go with them.
Well, I mean, sort of by chance, but I asked the right guy to name. It's like
Right.
it's sort. I've asked someone who understands these type of things to come. I wasn't just going to put a thing out on the internet and name my project.
Of
I
course,
mean,
of
it's
course.
yeah, it's not. No, psychedelia is very involved. I mean, I'm not a drug taker currently, but that stuff has been, and it's just doesn't have to be about drugs. I mean, I feel like
Right.
noise music is like a different thing to me than regular music. Um, I feel like it actually can create like psychedelic experiences, like noise music. Just if you're blasting it, it can create. I don't know. I don't want to sound pretentious or anything, but it could just create this like displacement of your senses in a way that regular music
Absolutely.
can't do. Because it's like above regular music as far as I don't know what's happening. Like, so
Yeah.
right there, I mean, almost all noise music. Like a friend of mine, I said, "Oh, I'm doing this like psychedelic harsh noise project," and she was like, "Well, what makes it psychedelic?" And I was like, "I don't know, like a lot of stuff, I guess, like everything." But I guess some noise music is not as psychedelic. Maybe it's more like aggro or whatever. But even the aggro stuff's pretty psychedelic.
I think it's inherently psychedelic on some level, like the
Yeah.
phenomenon and the effect it has.
Yeah, like
But,
macronephro to me is very psychedelic,
oh, for sure.
or incapacitance, very psychedelic to me.
Very.
But some people would hear that as just a complete frontal assault. Some people would hear it as just pain.
But I mean, also you are incorporating these kind of new age elements to it, which is something I think is really interesting and really well done, in that I'm often critical of, like, when people take noise and, like, layer some music in it, 'cause it's almost like they're trying to, like, well, first of
Yeah.
all, what bothers me about that
Me
is
too. I'm critical of that too. I don't like it basically when people do that.
well, what bothers me about
Yeah,
it most
hypocrite.
of the time is that people often then go to, like, the bare minimum with the music. They go into, like, either, like, sad minor chords,
Yeah,
which are
they
kinda like,
do.
or
Too
but
easy.
what they go to the really easy, boring music, where these are people with, like, kinda like, maybe good musical taste and good noise taste, but then they're like, "Oh,
Sure.
I'm gonna put some emotion into the noise through some music, and I'm gonna pick, like, the most kind of
Yeah.
obvious thing," but the green tea stuff is infused with all these kind of, like, tonal melodic things, but they're really obscure and psychedelic in their own right. I mean, like, I don't know how to describe them in a musical, theory sense. I guess the most, yeah, I'll just say obscure
Yeah.
or
Well, that's the
interesting.
idea. I'm glad it comes across that way because that's so like when I'm doing the tonal parts of this music, that's the part that takes the longest because I'll do it over maybe a dozen times, maybe 20 times.
Yeah,
And sometimes I hit it on the first try, but like it's rare because it comes out a little too emo or whatever
right,
sometimes. And I'm like, sometimes I do something that's really beautiful, and I'm like, wow, this is great, and I'll just erase it because I'm like,
right,
this is not what I'm trying to do.
right,
But just because something sounds good, you don't have to use it. It's
right.
like you got to do the thing you're trying to do. Like, what are you trying to say?
Yeah,
What speaks to the vibe you're trying to give off? Or and to me, it took me a long time to get to that place. I used to just be struggling to do years ago. I used to be struggling to do anything that sounds good. If it sounds good, I'm going to use it.
right.
But I trash stuff that sounds amazing all the time. I just throw it out because I'm like, I don't even want to deal with this. I don't want this around.
Yeah,
I don't want to look
respect.
at it. Yeah, I don't want to hear it. And it's just like too. I'll go down some rabbit hole and I'm just layering melodies and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? This is not what I'm doing.
Yeah,
And then I'll do some simple thing. And I'm like, that's it.
yeah,
That's what I'm trying to say. And that's what I'm getting at in this more, like I said, like esoteric, like subconscious kind of thing. Like I want to say something. I want it to say something. Like literally, I want it to speak to you,
yeah.
but not in a way that makes conscious sense.
I know this goes against what you just said, but can you try to further explain what you want to evoke with this project more specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I think like um these last few years have just been like super hard, and maybe for a lot of people. And like I think I've just been trying to like escape reality. Like I'm trying to like create a world of sound to surround myself with, to just shield myself from the insanity of like being alive in 2024 or whatever this decade. And I think I'm using this music as a as a portal to this type of escape. Like I'm trying to get somewhere, and when I have these tracks really rocking and like really fully I'm immersed in it, I go somewhere else. And other times it's just sound. Like if I'm when I'm making it, I'm like, all right, that's just some noise, and now I got to do this, and now I got to do that, and then a day later, whatever, a few hours later, oh, I'm in the place. I'm
Yeah.
in that place, and other people could probably relate to that too. Just so really, I'm trying to get to like a place. It's maybe an uneasy place. It's not like a comfortable,
Mhm.
serene place because I'm trying to take one thing I'm trying to do with this is to create kind of a serene thing that hits hard against a not serene thing because that's what life is. There really is no peace. So much like new age stuff is about like peace and harmony, and I'm like, well, that doesn't really exist. That's a nice idea, but who has that?
Right.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Life is pain.
Yeah, I guess it is. It seems like it is, but that I mean, through that comes a lot of, I think, deep happiness in some way. I don't
Oh,
know.
sure. Yeah, but that's how, yeah, I'm not saying it's not, I don't even mean life is pain in like a dark way. I mean it more
Yeah.
like in the Buddhist way or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
it's not like that's not a negative to me. Like
Yeah.
that's not a dark concept to me.
Right, exactly.
But that's why they always say this thing like hippies are really like uptight and like kind of mean, and
Yeah.
like metal people and like noise people are like usually pretty nice.
Yeah.
I find hippies to be like pretty mean.
Right.
Like,
Exactly.
and like more nihilistic people tend to be like much nicer.
That's absolutely true.
Like personally. So I'm kind of playing with that idea too with this project. But I do like unashamedly like new age music. Like,
Sure.
I mean, I've unironically hosted like a new age music program like on the local radio station where I live. Like
Cool.
I like have a deep knowledge of that music, like, and it's not ironic. It's like I really like that stuff, but I prefer what I'm doing to it than to what maybe like the straight up stuff.
I always ask people on Patreon before I do an interview with someone if they have questions for them. So I got a lot of questions about your process with Half Mortal, and you've kind of told about how it started and why.
Yeah.
But can you talk a little bit about the compositional process, the techniques used? Because to me it sounds very progressive, and I, it seems almost like there's a correlation between like Rorschach, like the kind of progressive,
Yeah.
angular, really eclectic sound going on there.
That's true. You kind of said it, really. I mean, I'm trying to do something progressive. I mean, when I made the first album, I was thinking, I don't want this to sound like what other people are doing. Like, and that's a tall order. It's hard to do stuff that doesn't sound like what other people are doing. Again, I was doing things that sounded good and erasing them because I was like,
Yeah.
that's just too much the thing. Like, that's what everybody's doing. Like, I don't want to do that. And then it would take like 10 more tries, but I would get to like the weirder thing.
Yeah.
And I would go, oh yeah, this is freaky. This is some other thing. This is pretty weird. And I'm like, I don't even think anybody's gonna like this, but this is weird. Like I'm in a weird zone. And that's kind of how it's always worked for me. Like starting in Rorschach, like, when we started that, it was like regular hardcore.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, that's not, what's the point? Like,
Yeah.
there's people doing it better when we started. And you're not going to get anywhere doing the regular thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
been in my head. That was like ingrained in my head from a young age. Like, don't do the regular thing. Do your own thing,
Yeah.
and try to get somewhere else.
Ken Geiger asks specifically, is there much consideration as to where the vocals will end up when the noise is being made initially?
Ooh, no. Wait, that's a good question. Is there?
Hmm.
Well, I get the ideas for the vocals when I'm making the noise. They start coming instantly. So I guess there are ideas. Like I'll stop making the noise if it's not evoking imagery or ideas for. Sometimes I'll do something cool and I'll be like, well, that's fine, but what am I going to do with that? That doesn't work.
Right.
Again, throwing out good stuff, like getting rid of it just because it's not going to fit with what I'm trying to do,
Yeah.
But other times it's even like, I'm trying to do something like I want with Half Mortal. It's more like, all right, this is going to have this type of like, I don't use drums, but have this type of percussion sense to it. This one's going to be short and blasting. Like there's definitely like it's not just like random, like,
sure.
Like each thing I do, I'm setting out to do something.
Right.
Like this one's going to be crazy cut up. This one's going to be more moody. So I start with a pretty serious intention, but the vocals take a long time and they're kind of done like line by line, recorded painstakingly to get it exactly how I want it to sound.
Because of the cadence and the delivery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And maybe even changing the words. Like I'll just scratch out, no, that's dumb. Like just change it constantly. And a lot of the vocals are done. It's me even using samplers on my voice, like sampling my own voice.
Cool.
So it's just a lot of, it's not just like me in a room, like a little bit, but not much of that.
Yeah. It sounds very, very deliberate, very like, I don't want to say surgical, but very like.
No, it's surgical. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the right word.
Yeah.
That's
Like
the right word.
it's very constructed and the whole,
Yeah.
I mean, each song has like so many different things going on and like so many surprises. And that's I was looking through kind of your musical history and noticed that you did make like a trip hop album or were
Yeah.
involved in kind of a trip hop
Mhm.
project at some point.
Yeah,
Maybe you
that came
still
out
are.
on DFA. I'm not doing that anymore, but yeah,
Dawn People, right?
Gone People, that's kind of on a big label, but, like, nobody really cared about it. I think it's one of my best things, honestly.
Yeah, it's very
Um,
it's awesome. And then but I hear a lot of that trip hop, hip hop almost influence on like the Half Mortal stuff. Like the intro, I forget
yeah,
which
well,
album it is
yeah, I
like the
did it
intro
right
has
before.
a kind of like
Yeah.
sample
Mhm.
lo-fi sample. It sounds like kind of like 90s hip hop. And I was like, is this a 90s hip hop record? And then it goes somewhere totally different, like within like 15 seconds, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I did that. I did that trip hop record, whatever you wanna call it. I did it, like, right before I started doing the Half Mortal stuff, so that's just in my it's just in my thing. I love that kind of music. I mean,
Yeah.
Massive Attack, Portishead, like, or even stuff like Madlib or whatever. Like,
Right.
I love that stuff so much,
Yeah.
and I'm fine with it creeping in to this stuff. I mean, why not? It's just I'm not trying to do it.
Yeah.
There's
I
no
think
actual
it's
intent.
yeah, it's really courageous and bold somehow to like do these things because I think either people try to well, I think very few people try to do those kind of things, like have the courage to do those kind of things. I think noise is somehow very conservative, like in its ideas.
Yeah, it's
P-
gotten that way, hasn't it? I mean, it feels that way to me too, and yeah, I don't like that about
I mean,
it.
I love noise and whatever, but I mean, I notice that people are not super eager to try a totally new thing unless it's already been done.
Then it's not new. Yeah,
Right, exactly. But I mean, people aren't interested in like
yeah, I
people don't
know.
have the courage to really like go on a limb and just do something that's maybe gonna fail or maybe just be weird and like some people are gonna not like it. It's like there
Yeah,
are there are pretty strict genre
yeah.
restrictions.
Well,
And
when I was making the Half Mortal album, the first one, I literally was doing things where I was like, I did it the way people would like. I knew people would like, and I was like, that's just not what I want to do.
yeah,
And then I did it a different way, and I was like, yeah, no one's gonna like that. Like,
yeah,
and I just was like, oh, I just lost like another 50 people by doing it this way. And I don't like to think that way when I'm making stuff. But it was the first one, and I was just trying to figure out what I was doing. So I was thinking about the audience. I mean, I try not to think about audience when I'm
yeah,
making music. I just try to like really get myself like really excited about what I'm doing. Like, and I try to remember the initial thing because when I've heard it 5,000 times, I can't remember what it sounded like the first time.
mhm,
So it's hard to listen to those records for me now because I don't know what they sound like. I need like 10 years to pass before I can go
sure.
back and hear them for real.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Just real quick, today on the Patreon, we have an excellent exclusive track by Green Tea called Trails of Helvella that Nick graciously shared with us. The track is really intricate, dreamlike, cut up harsh noise, quite mind blowing to be honest, so be sure to check that out. There is, of course, also the extended segment of the interview on Patreon, which you can check out to see how the conversation goes further. We get into more gear details and kind of just dive deeper into some certain things about his work and his projects. There are 4 new CDs coming soon on White Centipede Noise. A new Jim Haynes CD called Inconsequential, really heavy, anxiety-ridden, dark, noisy industrial. There's a track was shared on the Patreon a while ago that's from that album. The full album is incredible. Um, a new CD by the Rita called The Alcest, a new direction, a new chapter in the Rita's work, a new album from Primitive Isolation Tactics called Time Hole, and a reissue of Trerix Sex Regler with really extensive liner notes by Projekt Hat, and the packaging is designed after the original Hatband version, so that will be quite special as well. The 3 CD podcast compilation is also still in the works. It's taking a little bit longer than I had anticipated, but it is also in a final push to get it out to the people. So keep an eye out for that. That will be available to all Patreon supporters, and it features like around 50 tracks from people who've been on the podcast, including audio excerpts from their interview. So pretty special release as well. As always, Premium Plus supporters get the CD releases for free in the mail. So if you support this podcast at 25 euros a month, you get all the bonus content, Discord access, everything else. Plus, you get all the new White Centipede Noise releases, the CDs, free in the mail directly to you. A huge thank you to all who support. I really need it to keep things going here. And so if you support, I'm very, very appreciative of it. If you're a fan of this podcast and want to give it some support, please check out patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. There's a ton of great stuff available for supporting, and you basically make this possible. Next week on WCN TV, there's a new episode of Noise Cribs with Drees of Vincent Dallas. We also sat down for a nice interview in his home, so keep an eye out for that. There's lots of really cool stuff coming around the corner. Back to the episode. Speaking of taking the time and going backwards, let's talk about Rorschach. You were in that band so young, and it was such a huge band, really influential, I think, for what came after, and meant a lot to a lot of people. Can you just tell me about that, that time and how that came about, Protestant, how that record came about, and the progression of the band?
I mean, so we started, it was, we were just like hardcore kids living in North Jersey. And I was lucky enough to meet some extremely talented people. And the drummer of Warshock, we actually went to high school together. And he's like a metal guy. He wasn't into hardcore at all. And he really good metal drummer in high school. And he was a couple of years older than me. And I had the nerve to, like, one of the biggest things I ever did in my life, which is had the balls to be like, you want to play in my band? Like, I had seen his metal band, which like sounded like Anthrax. I saw it at like a Battle of the Bands. Yeah. And like, it was so good and I could barely play. And I was like, I can't ask this guy. Like, he's in this band. And he was just like, sure, yeah, I'll do that. And that was a different band, really shitty band. And then I was getting Rorschach together with the other guys, and we needed a drummer. And I looked him back up again. And I was like, dude, I'm starting this band. It's going to be much better. Yeah. And I mean, if we didn't get him, it wouldn't have been the band, because he's like, him and Keith, the other guitarist, like, those are the guys still, like, they like redefined that music, but I'm responsible for getting those two guys together.
Yeah, cool.
It was all me. And and I didn't play guitar until we started Rorschach. I was like a bass player, and I could barely play at the time. And Keith was like this highly skilled guitarist who like took lessons with like the guy who taught the guy from like Nuclear Assault. Like, he was like a real guy who could have played in like a serious metal band, Right. And he's like, no, you're going to play guitar in this band. And I was like, I don't know how to play guitar. And he's like, I'm going to teach you. So he was really patient and sat down and taught me. So I learned how to play guitar on Rorschach songs. That's how I learned how to play guitar. And so when I play guitar, I automatically make all these funny chords, because that's how I learned how to play guitar. Like,
sure, probably crazy tuning and stuff.
No, we use normal tuning. Yeah. He was against funny tunings. Okay. I wanted to start using like down tuning and stuff. He didn't want to do it. Okay. But like, we were really into like Voivod and De Kreutzen and all these bands that use like angular chords, like weird minor chords, and just crazy, like however you could put your hand, figure out, who cares if it's a chord, just this is how your hand goes, and it sounds awful, Yeah. And so he taught me how to do all this stuff, and it was a real struggle, and the music kept getting more complicated, like quickly. Yeah. Because I was kind of pushing him. In a way, I was like his muse. Like, I was like, dude, we got to be like so insane. We need to be the craziest sounding thing out there. We need to be so much more extreme and so much crazy. Nobody's crazy. There's nothing crazy. Like, the only thing crazy was like, at that time, was like Eric Wood and PHC, which was his band before, like Proto Power Violence or whatever. Yeah. I heard that 7-inch, what's it called? Gravel Truck, I think it's called. I heard that 7-inch, like 89. And man, if you listen to that today, it still sounds like new. And that was him fully formed. Like, he had the blueprint for that kind of music down, like Power Violence. And we didn't play Power Violence, but we often get lumped in with that stuff. Sure. But we loved what he was doing. And then bands like Infest and Blast, like, there were some people doing some cool stuff, Neurosis. Yeah. But like, that wasn't really happening on the East Coast. Like, it was all like thuggy hardcore, for the most part. And I didn't like that stuff, but I liked hardcore, So so we just were trying to be as dissonant as possible, and it took a while to get there. and by the time it came to making Protestant, we were there. Like that was the record I wanted to make when I was 17, but like I didn't know how. I didn't know. That was the sound in my head was Protestant. Like, and like the vibe of those years of my life was Protestant. Like
Wow.
it was a dark time in my life.
Yeah.
And you know, I wrote a lot of the lyrics, and you know, I came up with the band name. I did all the like the naming stuff. I did a lot of that stuff in that band. So like I didn't write the music. Keith wrote like 95% of the music. But I did a lot of the arranging and composing of the songs.
I don't have that much knowledge of hardcore and metal from that era, but like it seems to me like the content and the aesthetics of the band was much more like existential than most other
Yeah,
music from that genre.
it was. I mean, we were like coming of age and realizing how awful the world was. And just like, I was like, whoa, this is what like reality is. This is like what adulthood is going to be. This is how people are to one another. Like, I don't like anything about this. Like, I don't like anything about like this reality or this society or this world. I mean, that sounds like the most basic punk thing. I don't like society, but you know, it was true. I didn't.
Right.
And I think we were trying to convey something like kind of as dark as possible. Like, I mean, one of those songs on Protestant is about like being old in like an old folks home and like dying alone, like how that happens to people. And I mean, man, I'm dealing with that in my own life now, like with my elders and stuff. And like, wow. And I wrote that when I was like 20 or something. Like, who's thinking about that when they're 20? Why are you thinking about that? I don't know why I was thinking about that.
Yeah.
But like, it's dark as hell. And that was just the vibe. It was just like, how dark can it get without being, you know, like the thing you were talking about earlier, without just calling it like destruction, mass destruction, or just without being generic. How dark can it get? How can you get beyond that to another level?
It's like it's I mean, it's the same thing that I see in like Green Tea, and very different, but like it's what I like. It's what I guess my simple brain like considers like poetry. Like when there's this,
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
you know, mysterious element there that's kind of deeper, but simultaneously more subtle than the most obvious thing, and that makes it somehow more illuminating.
Yeah, I mean, it's all related. To me, all this music is related. It's all just the same thing. It's all, I mean, Rorschach was a collaboration with a bunch of people, and I was just one element of that. I'm not going to take too much credit for that. Everybody was a heavy hitter in that band for sure.
Sure.
But you know, I had a huge amount to do with the vibe of that band. And I was a deeply depressed teenager. And that band like kind of saved my life, honestly. I mean, I don't want to sound corny, but like that band saved me, and having those guys around and making that art and that music that could connect with people. Like when we would play a gig, the connection with the audience was strong. You know, we would roll up to some like VFW hall in Nebraska, you know, and like the opening bands are playing, and it just feels like a show in a VFW hall, you know, and then we would play, and like it would just, everything would die, you know, it would just be like darkness would consume the room. And I'm not trying to brag or anything, but like that's what would happen. Like it would just become, and people would just be like, oh shit, what happened, you know?
But those must have been like totally electrifying times.
Well, it was great that you could just pull that out. The fact that you could just do that, and like you kind of knew you could do it, and you didn't know how, because it's not again, it's the subconscious. It's some other thing that you can't understand how you're doing it. But when you get those people together and you do that thing and you make that music together, that's what happens. And when we did the reunion stuff, the same thing happened. Like we got on stage and I forgot what it was like. And I was like, oh, damn, this is like we're conjuring this thing. And I don't know how to do that with other people, you know, not necessarily, you know, not like that.
Right.
It was a special thing that we could just bring this level of, I don't know, like not chaos, but just darkness isn't the right word either. I don't know. Just this kind of like everything's closing in on you, and and you're feeling this vibe again, transporting you to somewhere else even if you're at a VFW hall and it's 7:30 on a Wednesday night, we're still going to do it. No light show, no nothing. We didn't need anything to do it, and we could do it every time. Wherever we were playing, in a kitchen. We played some crazy shows back then.
How does that feel now? I mean, people say that Protestant influence, like, Converge and so much of what came after. How does
Yeah.
it feel now to have that in your past and your kind of your history and your lineage
Well, for
as like
years,
the first thing that you did, or maybe one of the
yeah,
first things that you did, like this really, really important thing that was so
yeah.
powerful and important for so many people?
Well, it was very problematic for me at first because when it ended, I'm gonna just, I was a little bit of a cocky dude. I was in this like huge band and it ended. I was like, all right, well, the next thing I do will be like huge also. And like, that's not how life works. That's not how it goes. Like, people don't just care about everything you do. And so I was like lost in the weeds there for a number of years. And I did some good stuff in those years, but like, when that's all anybody ever wanted to talk to me about.
Sure.
And I was like, well, what about what I'm doing now? Tell me about this, tell me about that.
Right.
And I would get kind of angry at, like, someone would approach me at a bar or whatever and just be like, because I was living in New York City. And so a lot of, we were really big in New York. So people would come up to me and just want to talk to me about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I would be like mean to them. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to hear about it. Don't talk
Yeah.
to me about this. Then years go by and you're like, oh, damn, that was like really special.
Right.
And then, the band didn't end on super good terms. So like the reunion stuff we did in like 2009, and we did it for a couple of years, was really like healing for the group. And it was great to play to bigger audiences because we played a lot of shows to like 2 people back in the day.
Sure.
Like a lot of shows
Yeah.
to like handful of people.
Sure.
But the first tour we did was 3 months. We literally looked at when do we get off school? When does school start?
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we'll just play all those days.
Wow.
And we drove everywhere and played everywhere. And
Right,
people
but
weren't doing that then. People weren't doing that.
Yeah.
Like Black Flag did it like earlier, like 5 years earlier. Bands from
Right.
New York didn't go on tour. They went to California maybe.
Right.
Or maybe you go to Boston. But that was a big deal
Right.
back then. Because bands didn't tour.
And you were like hitting every little Midwest town and stuff like that.
Every town. We played a bunch of shows in like rural Canada. We went to Canada and played, I don't know, 15 shows in like weird ass places. We played in the South, like a ton of shows in the South. Like, we played to like no one. Like, we tried to play in Alaska, but it was too far to go. Like, we wanted to play everywhere. We really tried because we didn't care. It wasn't a big deal. It wasn't hard to do. I mean, you sleep on a floor under a table with no pillow. It was fine. Back then we were young men. It was easy. I mean, it still sucked. And it was hard to play to a few people every night because you're like, damn, we're like a good band. This doesn't feel right. I mean, there's shows that we played now that there would be like the lineups were crazy at some of these shows, like Born Against, Avail, and Rorschach in Richmond, Virginia. And there was like 8 people there, If that happened now, there'd be like 1,000 people, But back then we thought there should have been 1,000 people,
Right.
we felt it was important what we were doing. So it was hard and it created tension in the band to be doing these shitty tours,
Right.
Like, you're playing shows and you're giving up everything to do this stuff and you're not making any money, obviously.
Right.
You're losing money.
Right.
And you're driving all over the place and nobody cares.
Right.
Then you get to California and people care.
Right.
It's like a whole different world, It's like we roll into like LA and there's Eric Wood with an apple pie, for us. He really did that. He showed up with an apple pie. He like loved us, and it felt really nice that someone, like, here's our people. Like,
yeah.
because here's someone who cares about what we're doing. Even the tours we did later, like, they didn't really get much better. I mean, Europe was better, but we played with like some big bands in Europe, like No Effects and stuff like that. Like, it was the early 90s. Like, anything went. There were no genres really. It was just bands.
Yeah.
It was like whoever could tour. It was just whoever could tour you played with.
Right.
So you play with some weird bands, like,
Was there, like, tension while touring, like, some people being like, "Fuck this is stupid," and other people like,
Yes.
"Man, we gotta stick it out, we gotta roll with it, we gotta be happy to play it," and, like, that kinda stuff?
Well, what happened was there became a lot of tension in the band as the years went on because we thought we were good enough or whatever. That's not the right term. We thought we could jump to more like the noise rock scene, maybe. And like a lot of people were getting signed to like Amphetamine Reptile and like Touch and Go and labels like that. And I think we thought we could just like change our sound just slightly, which we wanted to do anyway. And this is towards the end.
Mhm.
And start doing that kind of thing. But like some people in the band, you know, wanted to keep it hardcore and stay playing in that scene. And other people wanted to jump to doing like there was something that really hurt the band was we could have played a metal show at like a big club and the door price was too high for some people in the band. So like there was a lot of these like punk rock ethics
Mhm.
butting up against I want to play music for a living. And I was
Right.
somewhere in the middle. I was like, I don't know. Can we do this as a living? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it just eventually broke the band up because we couldn't hang. The hardcore scene kind of made us and destroyed us at the same time. Like because there's a lot of rules. And once you break those rules, and you start playing 21 plus shows, you start playing door prices $15 back then, which would be
Right.
like $40, $50 now.
Right.
You know, like once you start doing that stuff, and I don't know, I don't think people care about that kind of thing anymore, but back then it was super important that you had to be like pure.
Right. Otherwise, people turn their
And
backs on you probably.
they turn your backs on you. And the hardcore scene is what made us, but at the end, I felt like it was a rope around our neck. Like I think it killed the band in the end, and I did feel bitter about it for a while, where I hated hardcore after that,
Mm.
and not the music, not the like stuff from the '80s, or whatever. But I didn't want to. People would always be like, "Listen to this band; it sounds kind of like Rorschach." I'm like, I don't want to hear a band
Yeah.
from 1995 that sounds like Rorschach. Like, I don't care
Yeah.
about that. Like, I don't
Yeah,
play me
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
just go listen to like the Dead Sea or whatever. I don't want to listen to some hardcore band that sounds like Rorschach.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What are you most proud of looking back, about that time in the band?
I mean, probably Protestant, just like what we were able to accomplish with that album, just like the vibe we were able to create and just the the power that album still has all these years later. And a lot of people love the first album, Remain Sedate, also. To me, that was like a work in progress, but
Mhm.
it's certainly weird by any time standard. And probably just that second album just really encapsulated what I was trying to do with that kind of music. And it's kind of fine the band ended after that because that's just what I wanted to do. That was the goal, was that album. And it would have been interesting to see what we did after. We were writing songs after that. And we just, we didn't get to it before we imploded kind
Mhm.
of kind of not in a good way.
Sure. Guy on Patreon wanted to know if you were into noise back then while you were in Rorschach.
Ah, no. I didn't know what noise was. I mean, I had no exposure to it at all. I mean, the closest thing would be like knowing Eric Wood, and I don't even know when he started with that stuff. I mean, I remember getting a Crossed Out, Man is the Bastard split, and
Mhm.
the Man is the Bastard splits their sides started with a like a PE track kind of
Yeah.
thing. And that was probably in 92, 93. And I heard that and I was like, what the hell is that? Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't against it at all. I was like, oh, he's like taking it to the next level. No more music. Just
Yeah.
forget the music. I'm
Yeah.
just going to scream over this stuff.
Yeah.
But then, no, not in the hardcore days. I mean, I had heard, stuff like early Swans and really
Right.
liked it. I was really into Godflesh.
Mhm.
I mean, I saw Godflesh when they played back then, and I got Street Cleaner when it came out. I was like 17, and it
Yeah.
was a big deal record. Still one of my favorite albums of all time, and
Yeah.
definitely influential on Half Mortal. Godflesh is,
Sure.
but I didn't really hear Harsh Noise for a really long time. Like, I mean, I saw Masana on MTV when that happened. Like, I saw it in real
You
time.
saw it
Like,
in real time?
I saw it on TV. Yeah, I was
Wow.
watching 120 minutes. I saw it on 120 minutes, and I just, I rewatched it kind of recently, and they kind of present it as a bit of a joke. Like, I thought it was a joke, kind of. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
really take it seriously because it's kind of they showed like the wackiest moments, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
And the way Thurston Moore was talking about noise, like I didn't really like the way he was talking about it. And
Yeah.
when I looked back on it now, like I was
Right,
just
like, "Oh,
like,
it's just this crazy thing."
yeah, he was like, check out this crazy thing. And like the clip just didn't come across that great.
Yeah.
But you know, he mentioned the names like Merzbow, he mentioned incapacitance, and I was like, okay. And I did see some Merzbow footage from that same time, and I thought it was definitely extreme, but like it didn't like I wasn't like I need to check this out more.
Right.
But I did backdoor it into noise through like lo-fi music and like Silk Breeze and that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
like the Dead Sea
Mhm.
and then all the New Zealand stuff, which is not harsh noise,
Sure.
but it's certainly noise. And I got way into that stuff,
Yeah.
like noise with a lowercase N,
And
I guess you would say. Like when I moved to New York, I was really into like the No Neck Blues Band. You know, you don't hear
Sure.
a lot about them anymore, but their early
Oh, that
recordings were like noise, you know, it's
right, right, right.
well, like not harsh noise, just like weird, clanky, pretty ugly stuff. But then they became
Yeah.
like a hippie band. But like, but those first years where I saw a lot of those gigs and it was noise for sure.
In some ways, a lot of that type of stuff is more noise by the definition of, like, uncomfortable music. I mean,
Yeah. It's
than
unpleasant.
than some, like, harsh noise. I mean,
Sure.
you know, some of
Like
that's
that. Totally.
I don't know a ton about I don't know, you know, I'm not super well versed in it, but I know what you're talking about. I know some of that stuff is, like, really hard listening in a different
Yeah.
way.
It is hard listening and it's tough, you know. It's harsh noise is way more pleasant
Yeah,
sounding to
harsh noise is
me.
very pleasant, really. It's
I
like
think so too. I agree.
it's like, "Oh,
To
that's
me,
nice."
it's harsh noise is the inversion of ambient music to me. Like
Yeah, yeah,
it's
exactly.
but No Neck Blues Band was just grating and horrific sounding in those
Yeah.
early years.
Yeah, yeah,
But so
yeah.
I was really into that stuff. So I was definitely into noise. And then later on in New York, it was like I was really into the noise scene. I thought, I mean, it was the noise scene, but just like, you know, Double Leopards and like I was
Sure.
playing shows, I was doing solo shows with those kinds of people even back then.
Yeah.
I was like kind of all over the place. Like I was making like electronic music, but I was playing with those kinds of people
As
live
Nick Forte solo.
as solo, but I was doing basically noise set. I was
Yeah.
doing almost like a green tea kind of thing back
Mhm.
then, like really harsh, but kind of digital. And it didn't really go with what anybody was doing at the time because everybody was like floorcore on the floor. You had to moan into a microphone. Like if you
Yeah,
weren't
yeah,
moaning into a microphone, nobody wanted to hear about it. But
yeah.
I mean, a lot of those early 2000s New York was like all about that. But I didn't see anybody doing harsh noise back then.
Right,
Even like No Fun Fest was a lot of that stuff.
right.
I know that like the harsh noise people played, but they weren't the main thing.
Sure. When and how did your interest and not only interest, but passion for, like, harsh noise click and develop and tip in that direction?
Yeah, so that wasn't until I like moved to upstate New York and I was pretty isolated here. I still am isolated here. I just
Yeah.
don't really live near anything really. So there was no more culture. There was nothing to do anymore. I could go down to the city, but it's not close to New York
Yeah.
City. It's like 3 hours. So
Yeah.
I just, you know, hey, the Tronics board became like somehow I found the Tronics board. I don't think anybody told me about it. I found it somehow.
Mhm.
And I just would follow the Tronics board. But I guess what year did it start? I don't know. I probably started following it in the beginning.
I don't know what year
2005?
it started, probably, yeah, a little before I discovered it probably around 2007, but I know it was going on for a while before then.
So I started it as soon as I moved here. So that was like 2004. So probably 2005, I was following the Tronics board. And that's how I found out about everything. That's how I
Yeah.
was like, oh shit. But I knew about like Hanson and I knew about like some of that, you know, again, like Hanson is kind of harsh noise, but also a lot of noise with a
Yeah.
small N.
Yeah.
You know, before all that, I was still like Nego was a big label for me and like Kevin Drum, like Sheer Hellish Miasma
Yeah.
was like
Yeah, yeah.
that was like a game changer. Like, oh,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can
yeah.
do that? Like you can do this. Okay, I have permission to do this now.
Right, right,
Like,
right.
because I felt like, I don't know, no one's letting loose. Like I'm listening to electronic music, trying to find it there, and I'm
Yeah.
not finding it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I didn't really know about harsh noise. So I was like, where is this stuff happening? Like, where are people getting like nasty
Yeah.
with computers? I was more interested in computers at the time.
Sure.
And of course, Kevin Drum nailed it completely on that one.
Oh yeah.
But then, you want more, you want something different. And I don't know. That's when I found out about like Macronympha and then it's all over. I just bought all the records and started buying piles of noise.
Yeah, yeah, you get hooked in a weird way. It's like
Yeah, you get hooked.
it's hard to just
And
be like sort of into it. I mean,
yeah. I kind of did that for a while. Like, so I got way into it. And then I kind of pulled back a little bit and was like,
yeah,
yeah, I'll still rock this shit sometimes, but it wasn't like
yeah,
my main thing. I was like
yeah, yeah,
listening to a lot of electronic music, a lot of jungle, a lot of drum and bass,
yeah.
which I think has a similarity to harsh noise in a
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
Jungle, particular, reminds
Mhm.
me of harsh noise.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to somebody like TEF, like his music flows like jungle to me,
Yep.
or even some Merzbow stuff, like it flows like jungle.
For sure.
So the interesting thing is, or a thing is, that I took a run at like harsh noise. Like I tried to do harsh noise stuff in like 2007.
Mm.
I like was basically doing like proto green tea, like same gear practically I'm using now.
Yeah.
I'm doing like, I was really into Government Alpha, Merzbow,
Mhm.
Pain Jerk, like Japanese stuff,
Yeah.
and the Rita, Macronympha. So I was like trying to do stuff and I was making tracks and I was like, oh, this is pretty good. Like this is sounding good. Let me send it to some labels. So probably in 2007, I sent a bunch of stuff to labels, like whoever was, I can't really remember exactly who.
Sure.
Maybe I don't even want to name names, but
Sure.
I can remember a couple, but I'm not going to say. And I sent some stuff to labels that were bigger in that time period,
Yeah, yeah.
and like never heard from anybody.
Sure.
Like no one got back to me about it, and it was just under my own name. And you know what? I listened back to that stuff when I started doing this stuff. I listened back to it, and it was kind of weak. Like it wasn't that good.
Sure. Sure,
It
sure.
was like what I'm doing now, but just not as good.
Right.
So I'm kind of glad nobody put it out.
I think that's a valid thing to be glad about because I think a lot of people would like to erase their like first few
Yeah,
years of releases. I mean,
sure. I've done some weird stuff that's not
I
great over the years
yeah,
too,
yeah.
but
I mean, it's a good opportunity. It's a good way. It's a good strategy just changing the project name because then like it can maybe like kind of
right.
disappear. But
Yeah,
there's I think that's pretty common, and then it's gave you the opportunity to really knock it out of the park when green tea was like ready to
yeah.
cook.
15 years later or
Yeah.
more, but like I kind of like it. It made me think. I was thinking about it recently because I knew I was going to talk to you, and I was thinking about like, oh, like sort of being vetted by people. Like I kind of like that. I like getting the outside approval of other people, like before it comes out. Like I'm not really a DIY guy so much. Like I have done some self releases a little bit, and I feel like I personally need like the outside validation of like a larger entity like behind me to kind of say like, yeah, you're on the right track, or to even someone like Dom who's going to give you some advice. Like I like
Yeah.
that personally. I
Absolutely. I
want
mean,
that always, and I've worked with a lot of like larger independent labels over the years just because I like that kind of thing. I prefer, a lot of people are just happy to put out the tape themselves, but I'm like, I don't know, is it good? Also, I'm terrible at self-promoting. So like, how do I get it into people's hands? I don't know how to do
right.
any of this.
Yeah, yeah, and I think if you know who you're kind of referring to as a, kind of producer, mentor, collaborator, whatever, if it's someone, okay, I know this, I respect this person, they understand me, we respect each other, then
Yeah.
then I think it can be a really valuable thing. Something I think people should maybe do a little more, like,
Yeah.
get that perspective. I mean, I on the one hand, I always kind of like think, well, people should really just do exactly what they want and what
Sure.
they're going
Yeah.
for, but at the same time, it's then I think it's valuable to then kind of sh critique that with someone who you
I
respect
agree.
or whose opinion you value, like
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to put out everything you do.
right.
And does everything even have to come out? Like, so I was making noise in those years in like in the mid 2000s after I got rejected by all these labels or whatever. I didn't get rejected. They just didn't respond. That's a rejection, I guess. But
I have a
I kept
question, just
making,
out of
yeah, but
curiosity. Do you think these people knew that you were Nick Forte from Rorschach?
I don't know. I didn't say it. I just sent it with a note saying, "Hey, I really like what you're doing."
Yeah.
I would write thoughtful notes. I wasn't just cold calling people. I've never done
Right.
that. It's just like
Right,
I
right,
gotta
right.
like what you're doing. It
Yeah.
was all very thoughtful.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I don't think, no, probably they didn't know who I was. No,
Okay.
not everybody cares about that. And it doesn't relate to, if you're making
Sure.
like Japanese style noise, I'm not sure how much it relates, but
Sure.
people seem to care more about that now than they did in the mid 2000s. I don't know.
Sure.
There's these things ebb and flow,
Sure.
like,
Sure.
but yeah, so I kept making noise and I was like, I'm just going to make this for myself. Like, I'm just going to do this. I'm not going to even try to put it out. And that's the only time I've ever done that because I really like making noise.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just like making noise and recording it and listening to it and then just not even keeping it and just like making more the next week,
Yeah.
And some of that stuff I kept and it's okay,
Yeah.
it's fine, but it was, none of it was embarrassing. It's just not that good. It was just okay. Okay is not good enough. It needs to be great.
It
At
does.
this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm too
Absolutely.
old to be fucking around. Like I can't, honestly, I can't
No,
do
I
anything good. It's got to be great or I
I
can't do
agree.
it.
I think that everyone should have that attitude, but I think, particularly you at this point in your life, you've done so much and like what quality is, what,
Yeah.
you've done so much music, you've listened to so much music, it's like you're not going to be like, "Oh, like listen, check out my, that don't need to
No,
flood the world with something that's just mediocre."
no, because what's the point? Just to participate? I don't
Right.
know. I don't want to just participate.
Right.
Like I want to make something that can stand the test of time and something people can really get into and that I
Yeah.
can feel proud about. But just
Yeah.
participating, I have no interest in participate. I don't even care about participating that much. Like
Right.
I'm not like a scene guy. I'm not
Right.
like I don't even know that many people in the noise world, honestly.
Right.
Like I know some, but like not like some everybody knows everybody. I'm not that guy. Like
Right. 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 Right.
hardcore too. I don't know anybody. Like I
Yeah.
mean, I was in one of the bigger bands. I know like 5 fucking people. Like I don't care because I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in participating in that way. I'm interested in like quality work and I'm interested in the work, more other people's work.
Do you think the social aspect of DIY music, underground music, has a negative effect on the quality
Yes.
of the art, so to speak?
Yes. There's too much garbage and it hurts everybody else who's doing better stuff. And that can sound like a little cringy. Maybe I'm sounding like pretend like I don't know. I'm not going to say I'm one of the people doing the better stuff or whatever, but people need to do a lot less. I mean, I was just listening to some new tracks I was working on. I thought I was close to an album like just yesterday,
Yeah.
like some new green tea stuff. I was listening back. I'm like, this is shit.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put it out. And I was like, man, I just lost months of work. Maybe, I don't know. I got to listen to it again. It's like, this track's good. Okay. This is good. These other 3 are not good. Or they're fine. It's fine. But it's not taking me to that place we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
It's not transporting me. However you do that, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But like, you can't do it every time because it's hard. So it's a bummer when you listen back to stuff and you're like, not good enough.
Yeah.
That sucks.
It does. But it's refreshing too. It's refreshing too.
Just start over. Who cares? Start over.
And you should always listen if something in your mind is telling you, I don't know, always listen. You always got to listen to that.
You got to listen to that. And unfortunately, that's like a lot of the time. You're like, I don't know about this. Oh, but that part's cool. Who cares?
Yeah, yeah.
Just throw it out. Just don't mess with it. Just get rid of it.
That's good.
And so I just had that realization yesterday about some new stuff I was doing. I was like, I'm hitting, but you're only hearing about 10% of what I'm making,
Sure.
I'm making a mountain of music when I do this stuff. And I work on music all the time.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a studio, I didn't have a studio until 7 years ago.
Cool.
Now I have a studio. I can work on music as loud as I want all the time,
That's amazing.
And I work at a very high volume
That's great.
to make it. And then
Yeah.
I mix at a quieter than we're talking. I mix quiet.
Yeah. Sure.
And I know how to mix. I know how to EQ stuff. I know how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I've learned from some talented people.
Do you see yourself moving on from noise at some point? Kind of being like, okay, well, I've done my work here. On to the next thing.
I mean, yeah, what's the next thing? I mean, maybe that'll become apparent at some point. I have moved around a lot in my music making, but this feels pretty serious. Like this is a pretty serious obsession. I guess
Yeah.
if the world were to change and I were to become a little bit different, like if my mindset were to change or my anxiety levels were to change, I could possibly see moving away from noise maybe, but right now it's like a warm blanket that I don't want to give up.
Yeah.
So it comforts me a lot, noise records and making noise. I
Yeah.
find it very comforting in these trying times. So I don't know. I did think like, yeah, I'll make when I made the first two green tea records, I was like, oh, I can make 6 of these easily.
Yeah.
And I'm butting up against 6 now that are almost done.
Wow.
So, well, like the third one just came out today, and then I've got a couple others in the works and a sketch for what the other one would be. So I don't know. 6 sounds like a good number. I kind of like the idea of working really concentrated and then just I'm out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Like,
I've kind of gotten the sense that's sort of how you
yeah,
how you work. I mean, how you operate. You've been part of like
yeah.
several really intense like bands and projects that, have a
Mhm.
certain lifespan, you know?
Well, Raspberry Bulbs, fifth album, 10
Right.
years. That's finally something I've stuck with, you know.
Yeah.
I don't tend to stick with things. I get distracted really easily, and I jump around a lot because I have a lot of ideas, but I'm finding I can incorporate a lot of my ideas into this stuff.
Yeah.
And electronic music just feels really like there's some people doing some good stuff, but it's so vast and so sprawling
Yeah.
that like it's not really you can't really it's hard to find an audience with that stuff. And like I feel like I've made some really good records, and it's tough for them to find an audience.
Yeah.
It's just hard because it's just too vast.
And noise is really, I mean, as a genre, I think has a really dedicated audience that takes things seriously, and also noise itself. You can do, I mean, I feel like you could do anything with green tea. Or I mean,
Yeah, and that's
you could funnel so much into green tea and bring it a lot of different places, but still have it be
yeah.
itself, you know?
I mean, I want to keep it harsh noise. Like
Right.
none of my regular music friends like what I'm doing. They don't care about this.
Yeah.
They think they're probably pretty disappointed actually. Like, why are you doing this? But noise people really go apeshit for it. But like regular people, I'm like, yeah, but listen to that element. They're like, this is like, what is this? This is
Yeah.
terrible. Like, this is a mess. And I'm like, oh, right. Yeah. I'm hearing it with their ears. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this isn't your jam. But like, and I wish more extreme music fans would be into noise, but it's a bridge too far for some people. It's just, they
It's
can't dig it.
It's interesting how that works.
It is.
I forget sometimes too. I'm like, you just forget when you're so deep in it, and it seems so
I know.
natural and like pleasant
Yeah.
and like pleasant, really. I mean, it seems so natural and logical in some way, and then just
Yeah. And you're
you,
like, this is great. And then maybe you play it for a normal person and you're like, oh shit. Like, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
this is a
Then
level.
you hear it again, and you're like, oh wait, I
This is just static or something. Like, why did I think this was so good in your mind? Like, why would I don't even play any of my noise stuff for any of my friends anymore. Like,
no,
for any of my like my non-noise friends, which I have a couple of noise friends, but
yeah, yeah, yeah,
mostly it's just regular people who I'll play my other music for, and they'll be like, oh, this is great. Like,
yeah,
but then the noise stuff, forget it.
yeah,
Just people can't hang with it. I don't know what it is about noise, why it can't get bigger, but that's not my intention with the stuff. I don't really care about that. Like people that care about noise, like very thoughtful
yeah. They really
and
care about it.
yeah, and I'm one of those people, and I have been for a long time. So
Yeah,
that's fine. It's fine. But it is a bit of a bummer when you're like, I made this like really sick record, and you play it for your normal friends, and they're like, oh God, this is shut this shit off.
yeah.
Horrible.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, you're like a real true blue musician in like the best way. I mean, like really
Thanks.
just, and I really, I really truly love the fact that you have all this talent and skill and knowledge of so many different genres, and that you've landed at harsh noise.
I mean, I always thought I would, but I never thought I would because it was always in the back of my head, like, you got to do that, man. You got to. But then it would be like, I'm busy with raspberry balls, and now I'm making this trip hop thing, and like that's taking up all my time.
Yeah.
And it was always like this little loop in the back of my head, like, yeah, but what about crazy harsh noise? Like you can imagine it, it'd be good, you know it. And I was like, yeah, I'll get to that. But then the next thing you know, it's like you're getting up there and the years are going by and you're like, when am I going to do this exactly? Now,
Yeah.
And like I said, I was getting burned out on electronic music. Like it's just not that much innovation or just not that much happening there. I think noise feels more like what I'm looking for.
What would you say are your top 5 noise releases of all time?
Oh shit. Yeah, I knew you were going to ask me this and I have to look it up because if you just said name like 5 bands, I couldn't do that. Like if you just said name any music bands of any kind, I couldn't do that right now.
Yeah.
I can't be put on the spot. It doesn't work.
Yeah, well, you came prepared
Okay.
then.
I came prepared or this wouldn't work at all. All right, so here's my list. Number 1, and I went with harsh noise. I left out PE and industrial, and I left out like weirdo floorcore shit. I left out all that stuff. This is harsh noise, like WCN type people.
Okay.
Kevin Drum, Land of Lurches.
Cool.
Is the first one, because we talked earlier about sheer hellish miasma, but this was the one that was like on Hanson, and maybe like the first real harsh noise record I ever heard.
Cool.
Like, and I listened back, I hadn't heard it in a few years, but I was trying to think of what my favorites were over the years. And man, this thing is better than I remember. And I used to listen to this every day when it came out. I mean, I was listening. So, I guess I did hear a harsh noise record back then because it's harsher than I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird. It's innovative, actually.
Yeah.
It's if it came out today, everybody would be like, wow, this guy's ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And it's from like, what, 2003, 2004? Sure. All of these are like that. I listened back to them all and I was like, damn, these are all better than I remember.
Did you listen back to them for this, to prepare for this?
Because I was like, I'm going to say it's the best one ever. I got to listen back.
Yeah,
like
great.
What if it's not,
Yeah.
What if I'm remembering wrong? Because some of these I haven't heard in a few years.
Yeah. And nostalgia and like you said,
the time.
The concept of like remembering sounds is interesting. Like when you're working on something.
Yeah.
But I oftentimes think about that. Like when you have a song stuck in your head.
Yeah.
You're actually listening back to some recording in your brain that doesn't exist, and you might even like have the lyrics different or wrong than they really are in real life.
All of these were better than I remembered.
Okay, cool.
My whole list. CCCC Amplified Crystal.
Nice.
Just again, 92. What the fuck?
Yeah.
How? Like it sounds like it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
And deeply psychedelic, has the swagger of like a rock record.
Yep.
And it's just blown the fuck out. It's totally blown out, insane noise. It's like just perfect from start to finish. Perfect.
Yeah.
Just hugely influential, obviously, on what I'm doing. If I can get a piece of this record, just at 10%, 5%, then I'm happy. If I can and it's called Amplified Crystal. Best album title.
Yeah.
All right. So there's that one. Maybe one that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but Relay for Death. Birth of an Older, Much More Ugly Christ.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Just when I first heard that, it was like, 2009, 2010, kind of a weird time noise for me. Noise. I wasn't hearing a lot of stuff I was liking that much.
Yeah.
That record blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I listened back to it and like the other day and I was like, oh my God, I'm ripping this record off right and left. And I didn't even realize it. Like the first song on Snowblower sounds like Relay for Death. Like I didn't realize I was doing that.
Yeah.
But like this, I listened to this 1,000 times when it came out, and such a murky, I love murky shit. And it's so murky and it's harsh, but I guess it's not super harsh, but it's pretty harsh.
Sure. It's
more of that murky sound.
Yeah. And it has that great cover too.
Oh, great cover. I think I just bought it because it was on Hanson and I was just kind of buying everything on Hanson then.
Yeah.
And I liked the name. I was like, the title was pretty killer. So I was like, and then I got it home and I was like, this is like one of the best things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
And I listened to it the other day and I was like, this is one of the best things I've ever heard still. Okay, continuing on. Macronympha, Intensive Care. It's just like the best noise record. I mean, I don't know. It's not really an up for argument, really.
Yeah.
It's just one of the best. Just does all the things. It's perfect.
Yep.
It's great. I like a lot of their stuff. Huge influence, just the way they put stuff together, the degraded tape sound.
Yep.
The imagery.
Yep.
I mean, the imagery is not as much of an influence, but the sound of their records. And again, some of this stuff's really early on. It's like the blueprints laid out right there for everybody. And
it's also interesting how like stuff like that is so influential and and people cite as an influence so much, but not much is actually as good as that.
No.
That
I mean,
gets, that kind
how do you
of
do it?
attempts at. It's like
I don't know.
or
Yeah.
that or even that, like, committed and intricate, like, the amount of work that you can hear that goes in that album, you don't hear on a lot of,
No.
like, modern stuff.
But I take that amount of work to heart and I try. I
Yeah,
try to do that amount of work because I
yeah,
can see what's going into this. I'm like, "Oh,
yeah,
this doesn't take a couple of days."
yeah,
This
yeah,
is not
yeah.
a couple of days.
No,
This is a lot of work.
yeah,
And a lot of their
absolutely.
records are like that. In fact, I just heard that reissue of Crack, which is
Yep,
I was like, this might be one of the best ones. And I just heard it for the first time like a month ago.
yeah,
And I was like, holy crap, this is one of my favorite records now.
yeah.
I almost said that, but I haven't spent enough time with it.
Right, 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 I know the feeling.
Okay, so the last one, this is tough to pick five. This is crazy.
That's good. Should be
'Cause
tough.
I'm a record guy. Merzbow, Green Wheels. I'm gonna go with Green Wheels because it's from '95. It's right in the middle of the
Yep,
'90s.
yep.
90s Merzbow. I'm all about it. There's other Merzbow records where there's like 14 seconds I don't like,
Yeah, yeah.
and this one has no seconds I don't like.
Okay.
So
What are the
like
Merzbow sounds that you don't like?
sometimes the feedback gets like too squelchy or it just
Mhm,
goes on too long.
mhm,
Or sometimes there's like somewhat goofy synth stuff,
mhm.
like just sounds like random futzing a little bit.
Yeah,
There's
sure.
not much of that. I think certain records have more of that. This one's got all the sounds too. This one represents like the one I have the reissued double album and like the one is like really sounds more organic and then the one is really synthy,
Mhm.
like the synth noise and it's fast. I love fast noise. Like it's that thing that reminds me of jungle,
Yeah,
like intricate. Like I can't make stuff intricate enough, like I'm always striving to make
yeah.
my own stuff just like insanely intricate sounding.
Green tea is also very fast. I wrote that somewhere in my notes,
Yeah,
just like
that's an important element.
the speed of it.
Some of the tracks are slow, some, but that to
Yeah.
break it up,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
always thinking fast.
Yeah,
Tonal stuff is slow. The the noise is fast. It has
yeah,
to be fast. If it
yeah.
was a BPM, it would be like 200 to 240. Like, that's the range that I'm
Yeah,
working in, like the
cool.
speed I want to work in. But I
Yeah,
want you to be able to hear the sounds of what I'm
yeah,
doing. It's
yeah.
not just a blur. You should be able to make out actual sound. But I love fast noise, and Merzbow, one of the best at fast noise. So that's
Cool.
five. But that was
That's
tough,
5.
man. That was tough
That
to find because like there's 30 others. I didn't even include any in PE or industrial, which
yeah.
I love. I love that stuff. But
That's a good 5. I mean,
yeah,
that's a crystal clear 5.
yeah.
And, can you tell me 5, like, contemporary releases or projects that you really like? I used to say of the past year, but, I know not everyone, like, is listening to, like, hundreds of new releases each year, but, like
Yeah, but I am, so we're
yeah,
good.
okay. Okay.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of new noise. I check out
Yeah,
a lot of noise. I buy a lot of noise. I
yeah,
support the physical medium. Like I
that's
spend
great.
most of my extra cash on noise. I don't almost buy any other kind of music now. I'm buying noise exclusively almost
Killer.
because that's the stuff I'm super into listening to.
Yeah. Okay.
And I made it just the last year and tried to keep it as recent as possible.
Nice. Perfect.
Um, Rope Cosmetologist, Turn Left. Have you heard that one?
No.
It's a Ramirez tape. Uh,
Rope
Amazing.
Cosmetologist is the name of the project?
That's the name of the project. See, that's the problem. This guy's doing stuff too much. I had a feeling you wouldn't know it, and that's the problem. Is that this guy's doing too much stuff? Not
Richard's
that he's
stuff is
doing too much.
so good. He's so
It's
good, but
so
that
good.
is the problem that there's so much that it's hard
It's
for me
too
to
much.
follow.
It's
I
too
wait
much.
I wait till a certain label puts something out that I'm like, "Okay, I buy from this label regularly. I'll get this one," but it's like I know he reissues and puts out new stuff on
Yeah.
Deadline and, his other imprints a lot, and I just can't
Mhm.
I just can't follow it. But I know it's like
Sometimes I'm just
90%
like,
great.
sometimes I just spend an evening doing a deep dive on his Bandcamp, and it's really fun. It's like,
Yeah,
the hell is this? What the hell is this? And there's like a million names. This one stands out though as
cool.
like it's really special. And like if it was he's so famous or whatever, but like if it was someone else did it, I feel like more people would pay attention. It's kind of weird, like
Sure.
to this or some of these better releases that are like, I don't know. That one's like murky. It's like a little like Skullflower even. It's like
Mhm.
it's a two 15-minute sides of like the same one idea.
Yeah.
And it's just, you get lost in it. It's like a
Yeah.
cement mixer, churning murk. Okay, moving on. Primitive Wings, Morphosis
Yep.
on Satatawada. Such a good record. Like sounds.
He's a master.
That record, most of the sounds are like new sounds.
Yeah.
Like the way he's making the sound, I'm like, how's he doing that? How's he
Right.
doing that? I don't know how to do that. And if you can hear a record, and you don't know how to do it at this stage of the game, for me, I'm
Yep.
like, bow down to this guy. I mean,
Yep.
if you think something new can't be done, you're wrong,
Absolutely.
because he's doing it. And he's made me try harder to like come up with just bizarre sounds, like really try harder.
Cool.
To be like, and I've been having some luck lately, some stuff that hasn't come out yet, of like not sounding like him, but just getting into that zone of like,
Yeah.
ooh, I never really heard this quite like this.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's exciting.
A lot of filtering, a lot of EQ, a lot of different things you have to do to get to that weird sound.
Yep.
And I don't know how he does it, because he just can do one after another and pile it up in a track. And you're like, that's 6 sounds. I don't know where they came from. But yeah, I mean, Satatawada is just great label, just
incredible,
inspirational stuff. I like that it's newer, and like Vilho's doing great work on his own. All these releases, just one banger after another. It's just like,
it's crazy. I don't know how he does it.
I don't know either. I'm happy to be a part of that, though. It's really great. Yeah, it's awesome. Okay. TEF Live 2022-23. Holy crap. Have you heard that?
I have it. I haven't listened to it yet, but I heard a track. I heard a track from it, and there's a track coming out on the I'm doing a podcast compilation right now, and he's got it. He sent me one of the live tracks from that tour, which I heard. So that's amazing, but I haven't heard the actual CD release yet.
I mean, I don't know how I was like, oh, live, don't really care about, but Jesus Christmas. I mean, like, I don't know how you do what this guy's doing. Again, it's like a jungle record without drums. It's like, it's just fast, and like, this is live. Like,
I know.
It's just, and it's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that record he did years back? Framework. Yeah. If I had a top 10, that would be like underneath. That would be like number 6.
Framework is a masterpiece. It's
great.
That record blew my mind. Still does every
time. First time I heard
it,
I was like, oh, this is just, I just need to stop. Like, just forget it. It's all over. Like, he did it. Why am I going to keep going? There's no reason to keep going.
Absolutely.
When you hear Framework, sort of. Okay, number 4. Haven't spent a ton of time with it, but heard it a couple times. Totally blown away. Form Hunter Dread Harvest, the new Form Hunter. I only got it a few days ago, but I really liked it a lot. I think it might be their best one. The last one is on your label, Systems Endless Tunnel. Oh, love it.
It's very good, isn't it?
Good. Seems kind of a little bit underrated. I mean, I don't know how these things are rated. I don't know. I'm not really hearing about it. I mean, I just listened to it on your Bandcamp and thought it sounded sick, so I bought the CD.
Cool.
And the more I listen to it, the more I like it.
It's really good. It's special. There's something special to it.
Yeah, I mean, I see that it was like a tape, and then you reissued it. Very smart move.
Yeah, I mean, it came out on, I think, Veil tapes originally, and then he made a self reissue because it was like limited, and both of them were kind of small editions, and they both sold out, and I was just like, this is so good. And also, like,
really good.
The sound, I love that, kind of like degraded analog sound, but I also like to capture it on a CD, because I think dubbing can be kind of like as tape machines get older and people don't really make them anymore, like it can vary, like it can change how the actual sound is. So I like that it's like this. I felt like, okay, it's this degraded analog sound, like let's get it like frozen in time, like on a CD.
Yeah, totally. And kudos to you for doing that and bringing that out, because I never would have heard it probably. Yeah. But
I'm glad.
It just kind of reminds me a little, like, it's got like a little bit of like a Dillaway vibe, but then it brings like this really harsh, just crushing thing on top of it, and really liking that one a lot.
Cool. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got some more stuff that just came out. I haven't got it yet, but I'm really
Oh,
into that
cool.
guy's stuff. So um,
Yeah.
he has a label. Doesn't have a website. You just got to email him. Necessary Fixation. He just
Oh,
released a new
okay.
systems tape and two other things, which I'm
Oh.
supposed to have pretty soon. So
Oh, cool.
keep
I'll
an eye
have
out
to
for
check
those.
those out.
So you've hinted at having like several albums recorded or near completion, and you just released one
Mm.
today. What do
Yeah.
you got going on that, you know, green tea, half mortal or otherwise, that you can tell us about coming up?
Yeah, I haven't been working on any half mortal stuff because it's a certain headspace I have to enter into to make that
Yeah,
music. I haven't wanted to go there lately, and I feel like the Creature of Christ tape was like my. It's going to be hard for me to top it, so I'm kind of like
yeah,
staying away for a minute. But I will get
sure.
back to that at some point.
Yeah,
Um, let's see. I have a track. There is a half mortal track coming out on the James Light's doing that comp for the Hospital Japan thing,
cool.
and I've got a track on his comp
Great.
coming out, which should be pretty great comp based on some of the people he told me about. And then another thing he's putting out on his label of me is a new project, which is like more orthodox, like PE kind of thing.
Cool.
That's called Crimin, and it's just like I wanted to do something that was a bit more orthodox, but I
Yeah,
think in the end I did the same thing where I made it progressive. I think I
yeah,
screwed with it a little bit,
yeah,
but it's more like early Condom, like Taint, like that kind of
yeah.
thing.
Nice.
Um, and he was really psyched about it,
Cool.
so
Great.
he's going to put that out. And
I don't know if this is a secret, but he mentioned that you are playing guitar
yeah,
on
it's
some
not a
of
secret.
his work.
Yeah, he's just been him and I have really been doing a lot of things together lately. And in his stuff, we have a lot in common, like sonically and
Yeah,
outlook wise, I think.
yeah,
So he knows how to take murky things and make them sound really pristine, and that's like something I do too.
yeah.
And he has this project called The Sun,
Right.
um, and he's got a bunch of people involved,
Cool.
and I did kind of a lot on that. It's not done yet, but it's pretty far along. I played guitar and did vocals.
Cool.
Um, I did some like PE style vocals and then some more traditional screaming like metal vocals.
Cool.
And then the guitar is definitely like a metal kind of guitar, but then also there's parts that are like jazzy ambient guitar. So
Nice.
it's going to actually be pretty surprising record. Like
Yeah, it sounds like it.
it doesn't sound like anything
Cool.
that I've heard.
Very cool.
We're getting really freaky with it. Like it's super freaky.
That's great.
There's other
That's cool
people.
to hear that I mean, I love that he's really pushing. I mean, in some way, his sound is like kind of like rooted in, kind of traditional like
Yeah,
dark ambient, that kind of stuff. But he really does some things, I think, especially with that project, that are going very kind of like wild places. And it's cool you guys are teaming up.
I feel like this one blows the lid off of it. Honestly, like he sent me the initial tracks, and I was like, "Oh, this is really good," but it was pretty sparse still. And he's like, "I
Yeah.
don't know, fill it up,
Yeah.
do all kinds of things, go crazy."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I don't know, jazz guitar here," and he's like, "This is great." Not really jazz guitar, but those types of chords, like.
Yeah.
And I was like, "This is just what sounds good to me. I don't know. This might be crazy." He's like, "Nope, that's great."
Awesome.
So I mean, I don't know when that's going to get done. There's still a lot more work to do on it, but
Sure.
one more collaboration in the works is me and Slacking are doing. Well,
That's cool.
Green Tea, Slacking, not a split, a collaboration. I sent him a bunch of source stuff,
Great.
and we'll see what he returns to me. He's working on it, he said.
I'm looking forward to that. That's
So
another interesting meeting of the minds.
yeah, I mean, his music of like all like the kind of more modern people, his music really jumps out at me as being. I mean, I think I just heard him on Bandcamp. I don't know. I was just like hunting around, listening to stuff one night, and I listened to like everything he had on Bandcamp, and I was like, this is all weird and all great.
Yeah.
And I did something I never do. I just reached out to him on like social media, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, I just gotta say, I've listened to all your music, and it's really fucking good.
Yeah.
And then we kind of been in touch ever since. And I don't do that. It's not something I do, you know.
Yeah.
I don't feel compelled to reach out to people in that way.
Yeah.
But with him, I felt compelled. I was like, I got to tell this guy I'm doing this because this is crazy. I'm spending a whole night listening to this stuff, like,
That's very
and
cool.
being
You
kind
must
of
have
blown
stoked.
away by it. Yeah, so that's everything for 2024. And then another Green Tea record on New Forces. Oh, and I talked to Vilho the other day, and we're going to do another. There'll be another one on Satatawada too,
Great.
but maybe not this year. Maybe this year. I don't want to
Sure.
jam these down people's throats too much.
Sure. Let it
And
trickle out a
then
little bit.
Then the new Green Tea came out today on Mechanical Presence. Island Illusion is the name of that one. It's a CDR,
Nice.
because that label's all CDR, but
Yeah.
it's out some really good stuff.
Well, Nick, I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, me too.
Anything else you
Thanks.
want to add and mention that I maybe forgot to ask about, or that you want to tell the people?
I don't think so. Oh, I think I covered it, the whole span of my crazy shit.
You gave us a good history lesson, and also,
Yeah,
really
hopefully.
exciting. I mean, really inspiring to hear about kind of your current work and your mentality about things, and really liking
Yeah, it's
everything
fun to
I've
talk
heard. And
about it. It's
yeah,
interesting to talk about. Like, you don't really get to do this kind of thing that much. Or I used to do a lot of fanzine interviews back in the day, like a lot.
sure,
Like in the 90s, you'd be interviewed after every show, you know,
right.
like sometimes twice or three times, you know.
By someone at the show.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It
Cool.
was like common thing to be like, we played the show, let's do the interview. You know, it was like kind of part of it. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, Rorschach was in like a million fanzines back in the
Yeah.
day. But it's that ended at some point. And
right.
I mean, what you're doing is great. It'd be cool if there was more of that hearing from people. I don't know. It seems some
It's
people
hard
want to stay.
I mean, it's hard to be on the spot and ask questions. I don't know how much you prepared. I don't know how much I would prepare if someone were to interview me. It's like,
I didn't really prepare, not much, a little
I think
bit.
it
I
just
thought
comes.
about stuff just to get the timeline, the years right of certain
Yeah,
things,
but like the
but
why.
not
I
really.
mean,
I don't know what it
more
is.
the tough thing is about the why and the But I think it comes out. I mean, I think once you get rolling on it, if you know what you're
Yeah.
doing, then it comes out.
Yeah, you just know how to talk about it, and you remember stuff, and
I experienced that with like almost everyone. A lot of a lot of people when I contact them, they're like, "Oh, I don't know. Don't know what I really have to say about what I do, or I don't know. I'm not very
yeah,
articulate." But then like once we get talking, it's like bullshit. You're not articulate.
yeah,
You've got so much cooking up there, and that's the thing is like
yeah.
all this stuff has so much meaning, and like there's a lot
Mhm.
to. I think everyone has a lot to say actually about it.
Yeah,
And
I know I do, and I always know I do, and
yeah,
sometimes, I'm always like, nobody ever reaches out, like
yeah,
even about like the hardcore stuff. Like, really, you
yeah,
don't want to talk to me about this? I mean, I've been interviewed for a couple of books and
yeah,
about hardcore, and I have been interviewed about the hardcore stuff, but not about anything else. And it was
yeah,
nice that you wanted to talk about what I'm doing now, which is
yeah,
like very refreshing. That you're like, no, I want to talk about what you're doing now. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
thank you. So I
yeah.
appreciate that.
Well, cool. I appreciate you sharing that with me and with the people out there, and taking
Mhm.
some time this morning to do it. And
Sure. Yeah.
we'll be in
Keep up the
touch.
good
Thank
work.
you, Nick.
Yeah. Thanks, Oscar.
Take care.
All right. Bye.
All right, that was Nick Forté of Green Tea, Half Mortal, Rorschach, Raspberry Bulbs, many more. He shared a great track from Green Tea with the White Sandy Noise Patreon that you can get over there now. It's exclusive to the Patreon. It's called Trails of Helvella. There's also the extended segment of the interview over at the Patreon. Nick talks about his time working as a product tester for Electro-Harmonix, as well as some other gear-related stuff, and we just kind of go on deeper into some of the topics we talked about with the projects. That stuff is at patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. Please support if you're listening. I really appreciate it. I rely on it, and I'll return the favor by continuing with more great stuff going forward. There's a new episode of Noise Cribs next week with Drees of Vincent Dallas. A couple more really exciting interviews coming up this week that I will wait to announce until they are in the bag, but lots of exciting stuff planned. And appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate everyone who supports. If you listen and you watch but you don't support, please consider supporting. This is a totally independent solo undertaking, and I need the support of the listeners and maniacs to make this possible. Patreon.com/White Centipede Noise. Also, like I said, a bunch of really cool new releases coming up. Jim Haynes CD, Primitive Isolation Tactics CD, the Rita CD, Treyarch Throws It reissue CD. You can get those for free by being a Patreon supporter. There's also kind of a low-key second-hand odds and ends, rarities, private distro for premium Patreon supporters, White Centipede Noise Bazaar. It's a mixed bag up there. I try to keep prices cheap and affordable and offer some cool things that the collectors out there might be looking for. Anyways, thank you so much. Go check out the new track, Trails of Hellavella by Green Tea on Patreon, and see you next week.